So this week's focus is going to be mostly on Plato, but I am sneaking Sappho into the mix because she is a important poet, and I want you to be familiar with her at least. So read some of the poems that are in your text. I think they have like three of them. And notice how almost modern they sound and what she is writing about. She's writing about love and relationships and things to that nature. And from Sappho, we get these terms. We get sapphic and lesbian. So Sappho has this reputation now of having been, you know, a lesbian, and she was living on the island of Lesbos, and she had these relationships with women, and she was co-opted certainly by the feminist of the ideal of a woman and femininity, etc., all of that kind of stuff. But the reality is different when we look back from the modern mind. you know uh, we do have a separation of the sexes in general society. Was she, did she have what we would call lesbian relationships today? We're looking at it from a modern eye, and sometimes that doesn't totally work. But in any event, familiarize yourself a little bit with her poetry. It's pretty, it's very nice, and you know that you have somebody good when her writings are banned. So she was outlawed for being pornographic, and then she was outlawed again. So anytime you see somebody's stuff being literally or figuratively burned, pay attention to it because it's probably good. All right, let's get into the meat of the matter, which is Plato. He wrote about the state, right? How do societies form more of an ideal state? How how is it best for the population that is living there? So the republic. He writes about how to make an ideal republic. So you can see the connections to our own current political system, right? The United States is a republic. So Plato's ideas are forward thinking in a lot of ways. He wants to have the head of the republic, or the people who are in charge, they should be the guardians here. If you look down here, they are filled with reason. It's about the mind and the intellect. It should be the best of the best, right? Those should be the people who are in charge of the republic. This is not such a foreign concept. If you think about it, who's in charge of our republic? It's people who graduate from Harvard, right? Harvard, Yale. Once in a while, there's somebody that sneaks in from Columbia University. But you can see that the people who are in charge of our republic are the intellectual elite. The next area he talks about, we need to have the auxiliaries, the spirit. So think about what section of our society is always concerned with the spirit and the honor, etc. That would be the military, right? So that's what we also need in an ideal state according to Plato. And the last part is the producers, and that would be everybody else, right? We need to have people who farm, and we need to have people who, make dishes, etc. So that is how an ideal state is going to be represented. It's an interesting idea, and I think that again, it's something that we do have to this day in one form or another. So overall, here are some ideas of Plato. We looked at what he thinks about the Republic. He believes that justice is real and justice needs to be objective. Again, this is a really interesting concept. Um, we again are a society that is trying to say that justice is blind and that it should be objective, and also that we can obtain justice. Now, in reality, in our modern, society, is that necessarily true? I guess we know that that doesn't always happen, but striving for this idea that justice can be objective. This comes to Plato. Another philosophy point is the appearance versus reality. You cannot judge truth on what appears to be so. Well, this is really important stuff because I think, again, also in the modern world, we're really pressed for time. So we don't take the time to dive a little bit deeper and we take things on appearances. Well, just because something appears to be so does not make it true. And we need to be analytical thinkers to rationalize what the truth is. And that leads to this final point here. Plato says this is the search for truth is not something that we just sit around and we have kind of, these thinking games. This is something that is what human beings, you have intelligence, you have the soul within you, you're a thinking person. This is what you need to be doing. You need to be thinking things through, not just acting like an animal and going through the motions. So that comes from Plato. If we look at the appearance versus reality just a little bit closer, he was rather forward thinking because he said that in the Great Society, when the Republic, we cannot discount our members. We actually cannot just automatically say, 50% of the population, the women, we don't need them. He says it doesn't logically make any sense. And, he understood the issues that people had with looking at, women. Why would women be able to be, in the auxiliaries? How would they be able to be soldiers? It just doesn't seem correct. But what Plato says is, we're influenced by the appearances, but not by the truth. So what is the truth? If you look at the two bodies, yes, there are physical differences, but is that a reason why the genders should be treated unequally? What is the real difference between men and women? And then what is the same? Certainly with intellect, women should be able to be philosophers and things like that. He does use the analogy of bald men, meaning that you look at two men, one has hair, the other one does not have hair. Does that mean one is less capable than the other because of these physical differences? And, does that mean that bald men are not, able to perform, whatever duty as men with hair on their head? And it's kind of nonsensical to see it that way, but that's what Plato would do, is he would kind of break down, his ideas. Oh, and make analogies, right? Okay, so then his conclusion is that gender is irrelevant. So we need to include women in our society, which did not really happen that much, right? It didn't really happen until very modern times in the late 20th century that women were, considered a part of the working society for the most part. But that's a conversation for another day, right? So the last part you want to look at is the allegory of the cave. And this is how Plato is speaking for his teacher, Socrates. So Socrates would always have these conversations where he's asking questions and trying to elicit some kind of response out of his student. So Plato is writing Allegory of the Cave using this framework, this structure. Socrates is asking these questions. And the overall allegory of being trapped in the dark, thinking that shadows are reality, um, I want you to explore that a little bit more by some of the questions that I'm giving you, but you can certainly look up a lot of pictures that illustrate what the allegory of the cave looks like and take note. And what is an allegory? Sometimes students are reading something and they're not paying attention to the title. So that's just one kind of point I want to put out there. Notice the title of anything that you're reading because it makes a connection. But that's an aside. So what you want to do for this week is focus mostly on Plato and his readings, and especially his famous allegory of the cave. Thanks.